Hello, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the latest episode of the Men's Mysteries. I am so excited and stoked today because I'm getting to interview Traver Boehm, the author of Man Uncivilized. Today I Rise in his forthcoming book, 28 Days in Darkness. And Traver is one of those pivotal figures in the men's movement in terms of the work that he's doing. I'm a member of the Uncivilized Nation. I've had the chance to go to a couple of the workshops, including Kill the Nice Guy and How to Best Work with Men. And I've definitely gotten a lot out of the interactions and experiences that I've had. So I'm super stoked and excited to share this with you today as a way of giving you a chance to learn a little bit more about his work as we also get a chance to talk about Endarkenment and what it's like to actually work with the shadow when we literally work at it from a place of wintering and darkness. So without further ado, I'm happy to welcome Traver Boehm, welcome to the Men's Mysteries. Happy to have you here. You are epic. I know you. I've gotten to know you recently, but please introduce yourself to those who might not know who you are and what you do.
Beautiful. This is always a tough one, Taylor. I'm an author, and one of my books turned into a bit of a movement. And so I wrote a book for men called Man Uncivilized, and it inspired guys to reach out and say, like, cool, we read the book, now what do we do? And cool, we started doing that. How do we find other people who do the same thing? So my life went from, I think I'll write this book, and then maybe I'll write another one a year or two later, to I'll write this book and now build a company around it and a movement around it and now even a nonprofit around it. I call myself a writer. I'm a bit of a teacher, and yeah, those two are probably, I like to take complex ideas and synthesize them down into ways that people can really grasp them and then actually do something with them. So that's probably my best CV. Somewhere in there, I'm an acupuncturist, but that's few and far between.
You're also the author of Today I Rise,
Yep.
and you're the author of a forthcoming book, which will be coming out around the time this podcast airs, which is called 28 Days in Darkness. I've read Today I Rise. It helped me get through a couple of breakups. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
And I've also read Man Uncivilized, and I'm also a member of the Uncivilized Nation. So for anyone who's watching this, just to mention that as a point of clarity, that, and you and I recently met in person at the How to Best Work with Men workshop that was taught by you
Yes.
and Dewey Freeman.
Yeah.
Something I really appreciate about you is exactly how you described. You take complex ideas and break them down and synthesize them. I do the same myself. I've written a number of books over the years, and I think finding somebody who can do that kind of thing is not always easy. So I'm curious as to what your process is for how you take in ideas from other people, other resources, and all that, and then how you end up breaking that down and synthesizing it into whatever it is that you create. Because I'm always fascinated by what people do with their creative process.
I used to joke, Taylor, when I was like dating in my 20s in LA. I think I had on a dating profile, like, I'm the metaphor master. Like, I can always come up with a metaphor that would help someone go, oh, it's this and that. So I try to just think of what would I need to hear at each stage of my own development or each stage of my own life. And how do I just continually make something stupid simple?
Hmm.
Right? Like, I want simple. I want to go like, oh, I've had really great teachers. I think that's probably where it came from, who I would be struggling with something, and they'd say one sentence and go, oh, if I can look at it this way, it's sort of like the Tetris board. Like, that's the one piece that comes and knocks all the other Tetris pieces above it down. So I don't think I have a formal process for it. It's just how my brain works. And some of it was training. You've written a shit ton. When I was a gym owner, I had to write a daily blog for 6 years. And I use that as training of like, cool, I have this really advanced training technique or concept. How do I break it down to the layperson that has no concept whatsoever or no context whatsoever? So if I'm talking about an Olympic lift that no one's ever seen or done or heard of, how do I say, like, this is you taking your suitcase in an airplane from the ground to the overhead compartment? Because how many times have we done that? And some of that came from, I had this great self-defense teacher named Tony Blauer who would say, hey, these movements that I'm teaching you, they're all movements that you've done 10,000 times. Right. So I remember him trying to explain like an elbow going across someone's face. And people would try it and they'd be like, oh my God, I can't do it. And he's like, cool. How many times have you reached across and grabbed your seatbelt and put it on? And like all of a sudden, I watched all the light bulbs go off of people in the class and went, that's a really good teacher. He took something that someone does every single day and mapped it onto this new idea, and their brain got to make the connection. So that's, I think I sit with things for a bit and go like, huh, how do I make this as simple as possible?
I like that. I call it getting rid of needless complexity because it seems like people just do that. Like they make things more complicated than they need to be. And it's like, how can I make this as simple as possible to get the outcome and result that I want
For
and
sure.
still be able to do whatever it is that I want?
Yeah. I go back to great teachers, even guys that I currently follow who are talking about business, who are talking about spirituality, who are talking about jujitsu. You're like, oh, that was stupid simple. I get that now. How it's actually to me more brilliant that he could make it in one sentence land than, and I used to be super verbose with my explanations too, and go, wait a minute, that's not mastery. Mastery is when it's like, woof, these four words, nailed it. Cool, let's move on.
Yeah, and you're really good at it. I mean, I think that like when I look at Man Uncivilized, for example, the ethos, you
Hmm.
have it mapped out. You have these very concise, clear statements that if you look at it, you get an idea as to what Uncivilized is about. If you didn't read the rest of the book, you would still get something out of it just
Yeah.
from looking at the ethos alone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it's kind of funny because I mean, I think the way that I kind of think about it too is that it's almost like a lot like being like AI. Like you take in a bunch of information, you feed that into yourself, and then you spit it out, and it's a little bit differently because you figure out a way to simplify it. Having done some work with Chat GPT, that's what I see. And it, you can kind of see in the background there, I've got a bunch of books on the bookshelf because I'm always reading and taking in information. I think that you can't, at least in my experience, I have not been able to be a good content provider without always taking in
Mhm.
information, whether it's listening to a podcast, taking some kind of training, reading some kind of book, because it continually sharpens the mind and it forces it to focus. And it's like, okay, here we go. We've got
Yeah.
this very concise idea.
Yeah. I find, and it maybe is because we like the medium of words, that most writers are prolific readers. And like I read constantly. And it's not as a forced exercise to be a better writer, because for the first, from age 6 or whenever I don't know when I learned to read until I started writing professionally or writing more often, it was like a book a week. And I just thought like I'm just a literary dork and didn't realize I'm just like packing my brain with like really good sentences or really good ways of structuring a story or something to that effect. So yeah, I agree with you. It's you got to be taken in if you're putting out. You got to be. It's like even just to keep the thing sharp. I have a note on my phone and I'll read a sentence in a book and like just jot it down and be like that's a really cool sentence. And some people be like you're such a fucking dork. But it lights me up and then I go back and read those and then get inspired from my own writing.
I love that. Like I'm a sapiosexual. So right there, it's just like, damn, that just juices me up. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah. That's the kind of information. That's the kind of thing I like to see. Somebody who's taking stuff in and turning it into something beautiful as a
Oh,
result.
thank you.
So here's an atypical question you're probably never asked. What was one of your favorite early books as a kid that you read again and again and again that stood out to you?
I don't know if I'd land on a particular book, but I do recall like I became a reader because my mom said, if you don't read this one Hardy Boys book, you know what the Hardy Boys, you're
Oh yeah.
about my age, right?
Yeah, you and I are
Yeah.
the same age. So
Yeah.
I mean, we're
The
we're
Hardy
totally
Boys,
dating ourselves here, but
right?
there you go.
My mom was like, you have to read this by the end of the summer, or you can't go to soccer camp, which was at the end of the summer. And I was like, this is bullshit. I remember I was like probably 7, 8 years old. And by the time soccer camp rolled around, I'd read like 30 books in the series. And so I will credit whoever the author is of the Hardy Boys for really grabbing me and like that is what launched me into my love of writing and love of reading. And then all of Stephen King stuff. Because, man, that dude's just one, a psychopath, and then two, just completely prolific, you
I
know?
know. Yeah, yeah. He puts me to shame. So you're going to be going 3 months into the dark later this year,
two
and
months, two
two
months,
months. 2 months. Okay, I thought I heard 3 months earlier today.
49
So
days,
yeah,
49
okay,
days.
but still, long time.
Mhm.
I mean, I've done some Endarkenment work myself, and I'm really looking forward to reading your book, 28 Days in Darkness.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about that book and your initial experience of going into the dark for 28 days. Because let's be honest here, I don't think most people would even think of doing something like that. I think they would shy away and be intimidated by the idea of even spending a week in the dark or 3 days in the dark, let alone doing 28 days in the dark or two
Yeah.
months.
This was presented to me, Taylor. I was on a year-long explorative project. I'd just gotten divorced, I'd sold a business. Some factors in my life had come together that I didn't want, and then an opportunity that I did want, which was I was being going to get paid for the next 2 years without working. And so I created this year-long project called the Year to Live Project, and the gist of it was, what would I do if this was my last year alive? And I didn't have terminal cancer or anything of the sort, but I thought, I feel like my life up till this point has died. I was at that just sort of the middle passage that so many men go through of unconsciousness to consciousness. And so I was exploring this for a year. And I was at a men's conference or a men's workshop. And one of the participants actually had terminals or had cirrhosis of the liver and was given 6 months to live. And he and I were eating lunch on a break at the workshop. And he asked what I was doing. And I told him about the year long project. And he says, if you really want to explore death without dying, you have to do a dark retreat. I was like, cool. What the fuck's a dark retreat? And he explains that it's this period of time reclused from society in a pitch black room by yourself. And there's lineage to this, there's tradition to this. It's not just like John Smith one day decided to make this up and this guy followed it. Like there is tradition to it. And he had done 180 days cumulatively, so not at one time, and told me about 49 days and he'd done some shorter stints, etc. And I was really, really intrigued by it. Here's the actually the follow up is he was like, yeah, and the very first time I did it, they had to pull me. This was in Tibet. He's like, the Tibetans had to pull me out, and like the 40th day because I was bleeding from my orifices, from my eyes, from my ears, or from my nose. And I was like, wait a minute, why were you bleeding from your orifices? Like, is this part of the, like, tell me more, please. And he goes, yeah, the Tibetans told me that I had gone so deep into meditation that I had encountered demons. And when he said it, he was like, demons, right? And his face got all fucking contorted. And I was like, ah! And I was like, did you encounter demons? Right? God bless him. And he was like, no, I think I had food poisoning, but they pulled me out anyway. And so I was that intrigued, though, of like, wait a minute. What is this idea? And here's what it intrigued in me. I was a very physical human. I was a professional fighter. I ran a CrossFit gym at the time. I was a writer. I was outward. Like I was just getting a footing into that world. So everything was external. I was trying to make money. I was worried about my body. And I remember thinking, this will require all of the skills that I have never relied on. That makes sense? Like I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
through in life by being athletic, by being articulate, by being intelligent, by being somewhat charismatic. That's how I've built my life. Now, over here in this category, all of that's fucking useless. So, one, can I do it? Like, is it just straight up like, will I make it through this? Will I tap out? And two, what attributes or strengths or skills that I don't have that are dormant will it awaken? Or if they're only slightly awakened, will they strengthen? So it seemed like this incredible passageway or initiation. I didn't have the languaging back then of a test that will require all of will require differently from me than ever has been before. And so that night I Googled like dark retreat, and three places come up. And then for everybody in business, this is a really good lesson. One person replied to me within like an hour and was like, "Hi, we're so and so. We'd love to have you. Let's talk." No one else got back to me. And so, boom, I went with them. And we exchanged emails for a little bit. And they asked if I had a meditation practice and tried to talk me out of doing a month. And I had picked a month, Taylor, because at the conceptual time of the Year to Live project, I wanted to do 12 1 month things:
Right.
hospice for a month, live in the woods for a month, yada, yada. So I was like, cool, I just want to do a month, having no idea of what that length of time would mean. It was just an arbitrary, like if I took you to the gym and was like, how much weight do you want to pick up? And you're like 600 pounds. And I'm like, well, why did you pick that? I'm like, I don't know. It's a nice round number. Not knowing that may blow your spine out the back of your body. And so maybe I'll stop there. Like that was the real impetus behind it. I learned a lot afterwards of what people can handle, how many people have done it before, the normal length of time, et cetera, et cetera. But I went in so blind. I just, no pun intended. I just literally walked in like, are you good? I'm good. Cool. Door shut behind me. We'll see you in a month. Right. And then some processes unfolded, obviously.
Yeah, well, and I mean, sometimes you have to go in blind, right? There is just something to be said for going into an experience and not really knowing. And you can't really know an experience anyway. I can say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go into the dark for X number of days, but if I've never done it, I have no idea what that really means.
Yeah.
So what are some of the processes that unfolded? I know you've probably written about this in the book 28 Days in Darkness, which I'm going to
Sure.
highly recommend. I've already pre-ordered it, folks. Definitely
Thank you.
pre-order this book and also get his other books.
Thank
But
you.
what were some of the processes that came out of this?
I would say first and foremost, Taylor, there was a like it was first of all, it was brutally hard.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to sugarcoat any of this. It was probably irresponsible for me to go in at that length. Like right on the edge of irresponsible, right? Because I came out a little bit fucked up. Nothing, no, I didn't go psychotic. I didn't try to commit suicide. I didn't die. Like a lot of things that I found out later happened to people. Um, so at first, it was actually, I mean, as it would make sense, it was boring as hell. Like for the first 7, 8 days, I was like, this is useless. What am I doing? I'm literally just sitting around. Like I'm making myself meditate. I'm doing push-ups and sit-ups. I'm like shadow boxing. I'm kind of living my normal life just without light. There's food being provided. Like I don't really have a schedule. Like, all right, this is not good. But I went in with this frame. I will not judge anything that happens in there. And I will not judge myself if anything comes up through me, into me, if I freak out and cry every day, if I go crazy, like no judgment. And so I'll start with that because when I came out, and there's more that I'll talk about, we'll circle back in. When I did come out, having gone a month with no self judgment, I remember getting on the phone with some folks in the week after and talking to them about that and asking, like, how long have you ever gone without looking in the mirror and being like, ah, shit, I wish I could fix that, or God, I can't believe I have to wear this shirt, or blah 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 blah, or even just like people's mental process. And I think I spoke to 5 people in that week, and I asked them that question, and 5 out of 5 of them cried and said, like, I don't make it to breakfast, brother, without judging the shit out of myself. So first thing was like I left that room with a month of patterning around no self judgment,
Hmm.
no matter what happened. And that in itself could have been enough. Like that was beautiful, right? A second piece is I was in the middle of a divorce. My ex-wife had had a miscarriage. I had left a community that I had built by choice, but also by sort of universal, like you're not welcome anymore, and you're not welcome here anymore was like what my psyche was saying. So I had all of this grief, like immense grief, For days and days and days, I just sobbed on the floor. Like literally, there's a concrete floor. I just lay there, like holding myself, crying, like pissed at God, pissed at my ex-wife, pissed at my family, like pissed at the world that this quote had happened to me, that I had ended up in that situation or in that position in life. Like, how could this have happened to me? And so I had to work through all that grief and just let it come and let it come. And I had grieved, right? I had cried about the loss of the child. I'd cried in my divorce, but I hadn't really spent 8 fucking days on the floor sobbing uncontrollably. Like I view grief now as we normally get like it's like you just pour a beer. Like we wipe the head off and be like, cool, I've grieved. And then there's a whole lot underneath it that's just sitting there below the surface. So really working through that and doing so alone, doing so with no control over what image is going to pop in my head, what
Hmm.
mental movie is going to pop in my head. I had mental movies that would last for days, like a loop, like every 15, 20 seconds for days because I couldn't go watch TV to distract myself. I couldn't open Facebook. I couldn't put on music. I couldn't go for a walk. I couldn't play with my dog. There was like nothing but the brutality of you will have this run its course till it's done. That was a big part of the middle process. I can keep going if you like, or if you want to stop and chat about that.
Well, you know what it reminds me of? I don't know if you heard the term wintering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it reminds me a lot of that. And I mean, I can think of my own experiences where I went basically through 7 years where like, okay, life was okay. You know, and it wasn't 7 years of darkness, but it was just like I lost my dad. I went through a divorce. I relocated to a city and had no friends. I did all this other stuff. And it was just like having to sit with that sorrow and grief every single day. Like
Right.
most people don't do that. They just try to distract themselves. They numb themselves. They look at porn, they drink alcohol, they play video games, they do other things. So I think that is so crucial that in whatever form we get it, that we actually get into that alchemical process of wintering.
I
So
agree
for
with you.
you, you know, you did this for 28 days. You're kind of going through this experience. And I'm curious, is this part of what's kind of going on for you right now with going into the 2 months? Because I know you've had a lot of changes in the last year.
Hmm.
Without saying anything about another man's work, I mean, just being a bit familiar with you, I know you've gone
Sure.
through some stuff.
Yeah. When I originally signed up to do it, um, or got the call, let's say, my cousin had just committed suicide. He was my age, wife and two kids, the family member who I was closest to. I don't have a strong family connection, but like that was he was the guy I always wanted to be, Taylor.
Hmm.
Like went to USC film school, worked in Hollywood, married a beautiful Italian girl who just wanted to cook for him and take care of him, two beautiful kids. Like when he killed himself, it ruptured my reality again because my brain or whatever couldn't figure out like, well, wait, if you have everything that I want and you committed suicide, what does that mean about my reality or what I like? It's split, it's shattered me. And I remember sitting at breakfast the next day. I was eating by myself at the table and I just got a full body chill. And it was like, and I remember hearing or feeling like I need to go back in the dark. Okay. I've like people have asked, you want to go back? Do you want to go back? Are you ever going to go back? Over the years and countless interviews, like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe, maybe someday, boom, woof, I'm going in. And I need to write this book because all the things that I went through, and it wasn't just what I went through, it's what I remembered in there. It's what I like saw about my past. So there's a bunch of stories in there that are not from the room. Like, I mean, if I wanted to just write about the room, it would be like, I woke up, I took a dump, I ate breakfast, I sat around, I meditated. Like, it wouldn't be the most intriguing book.
I did push-ups and
Yeah, I did
all that other
push-ups
stuff,
yet
right?
again. You guys ready for this? Day 26, more push-ups. It was really parts of my past that I had to reconcile and sit with and be with, and some conversations with figures in there or hallucinations in there. But yeah, that kicked off what I feel like is a darker period of my life. Then my dad died. Then very actually it's the week before I think I ended a 4-year relationship and had some other stuff come up, and I've recently lost a mentor and had some other people close to me die. And I don't feel like it's as acute as last time. Like last time I was an inch off rock bottom. And this time I feel like I can see rock bottom and I'm not going to get there, but it's the familiarity of, like you said, the alchemization, the alchemical process. Like Francis Weller talks about, there needs to be enough material in the cauldron for the soul to really start to work with. And I feel like in the last 16, 18 months, I've just dealt with loss and grief and shit happening and what's happening in the world. But what's happened in my own personal world has jostled me out of the state of homeostasis that, like you said, for a number of years was cool, was great. Things were good. I was on the up and up. Everything was, it was like building and enjoying life. And I'm not going to say I don't still enjoy life, but it's got a different flavor to it. It's like a dark whiskey as opposed to a year and a half ago it was chocolate milk. It's like, cool, let's just float, let's float.
And it's interesting because I call the experience of homeostasis the comfortable discomfort. Like you're comfortable, but there's also an edge of discomfort that you're avoiding.
Yeah.
And until you lean into that edge in whatever way it is that you need to, it's easy to get really caught up in just, well, life's good.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very easy to settle for that. And there is something about so exhilarating about leaning into that edge in whatever way. And that's part of that alchemical transformation. Like we cannot transform the world around us unless we actually change ourselves from the inside out.
Mhm.
And so, I know I'm going to be really curious to see what comes out of you doing that 2 months. And I
Me
can
too.
appreciate it as someone who's done that work myself and is still very much doing it, where it's like I'm leaning into that edge right now in my life, where it's like I'm going into a lot of unknowns. Things are not necessarily safe or easy, and I fucking love it because I feel more alive than I have felt in a long ass time.
Yeah. And I think for us men, I remember Stefanos, if you know him, it's a buddy of mine. It's maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He was at a workshop, a men's workshop, and was telling the guys, we've kind of conquered the external. Like we're about to send things to Mars. Like we've gone real far out there. We haven't gone 2 inches inward, especially as dudes. We just haven't. We haven't done the deep exploration of our psyches, of who we are, of a spiritual nature that isn't reliant upon an external God. Like that feels like the richness of the work that's being asked of the collective right now, and what I feel like is being asked of me. Of how do I deal with grief? How do I deal with unknown? How do I deal with wanting to teach something that's at a deeper level, but I haven't accessed that deeper level because to do so requires the loss that's come over the last 18 months. And so, yeah, it's a cooking or like a marinating, I feel like, is what's happening at the moment.
Kind of think of it also as like a tower moment, like the tower card, where you have the tower card and everything's falling apart. A lot of people, when they get that card, I do tarot readings as amongst many other things. And a lot of people, when they get that card, they freak out because they're like, oh, that's not a good thing. And what I've said to them is actually, that's the best thing because what's
Mhm.
happening is you're getting your delusion stripped away.
Mhm.
And what you're being left with is the foundation. And now the question is, what do you want to build or
Yeah.
where do you want to go?
Mhm.
But it's actually allowing yourself to get rid of all of the complexity, going back to simplifying things, getting
Yeah.
back to needless, getting rid of the needless complexity and actually getting back to the core foundation of who am I? What is it I really want? What's my mission and purpose? Where am I going with this life?
Mhm.
Because really, at the end of the day, like, what's the point if there's not something that you're moving toward?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
So with so you've had this first experience where you weren't prepared. Now you
Mhm.
have the second experience where you kind of know what you've gone through. So what are you doing to prepare for this second experience to be ready for it?
It's an interesting question because very little is the answer.
Hmm.
If anybody's done plant medicine, it's like you can do the dieta, right? You can clean up your diet, you can stay off social media, you can purify yourself, and it's going to do what it's going to do. Like the plant medicine is going to do with you what it wants, and so I feel like the room is going to do with me, the darkness will do with me what it wants and what I need. However, this is a long period of time. And so instead of going in with just a blanket, like, all right, it's 28 straight days and I'll see what happens and I'll surrender to whatever will come. I've broken this into 7 weeks. And each week I'm going to sit with a particular question.
Hmm.
And each week I'm going to have a different focus, be it yoga, qigong, a workout, meditation, etc. And the people who are putting me or assisting me, the same group who did before, but they're 5 or 6 years or 8 years wiser too and more practiced. And the woman who will be my lead has said, like, I want to come in with you every week, once a week, and just sit with you for an hour and see how you're doing and answer questions that may come up for you. So I feel like this has a bit gentler of an edge, Taylor, even though it's longer. And the facility that I was in Guatemala for the first one was barren, concrete floor. I had a yoga mat, a meditation stool, and that was it. Like there was no bed. It was a wooden loft with a very thin mattress. So it was like horribly uncomfortable physically throughout the entire experience. And on this one, she said, like, bring comfortable clothes, bring blankets, bring aromatherapy so you can smell things. If you want to have some food, like snacks in Tupperware that you can easily open and close, do that. I think it's less abrasive, and I'll get to then drop into a more connected place as opposed to just being like, I'm fucking miserable. I hate this. I have to endure it. So less enduring and more depth is what I'm believing. But I'll also be honest with you, man. I'm a mess, and I'm 75 days out. I don't sleep well already. I have wild, crazy dreams. My meditations are super intense. I'll lose my focus quickly. Like I feel like the room, the darkness, the preparation has already kind of gotten a hold of my psyche and is starting the process already.
I have a saying that I think you'll appreciate, which is that sometimes you have to go crazy in order to become sane.
I fully believe it. Fully believe it.
Because that's something I've done. I've had multiple experiences in my life where from the outside, it's like, you're fucking insane, Taylor. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? I've done death rebirth rituals, I've done some other things, and it's been like, yeah, I had to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go crazy in order to find my sanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because for both you and other people that are watching this, I say it for you because one, I really resonate with where you're at. I've been there. And I feel you, brother. And just know that when you're in that, there is going to be, I will certainly be holding space for you on my altar, just, in support of you doing that work. But I also say it to other people out there because for someone who's watching this, they might think, yeah, that's fucking crazy. Why would I do that? And my answer is, it's perfectly normal to go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is that society tries so hard to say you're not allowed to go crazy. You have to keep it together. You have to put on a brave face. I mean, certainly for men, how often are we told you're not allowed to feel anything but anger? You're
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to be in touch with your grief. You have to show that you've got your shit together.
Mm-hmm.
And I, for one, don't buy that anymore. Like, fuck that shit. That is crazy. Like living that way every single fucking day is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Whereas like what the kind of stuff that we're doing and like the men's work in general, it is about finding clarity and sanity in an insane world.
Yeah, and not holding it together.
Right.
With the first thing we say at the initiations is like, this is the place to not hold it together. Let it fucking fall apart. And I went crazy a number of times the first time round, right? There was, one of the last processes was maybe a full day where I could not cognitively figure out whether I had died or not. Like I could touch my face and I could kind of like, okay, I can physically kind of feel things, but it would also feel like I was putting my hand through my face. like truly sat with the idea of like, oh shit, I might have died. And this is what it really is. Like, how do I tell the difference if I'm in a casket somewhere, or if I've been cremated, or if I'm just hallucinating because it's been 26 days of insanity? And that was a beautiful, beautiful day to come out of, to almost have, to actually have conscious contact with this is what death will be, right? Full contact with it without having an NDE, without like having a car accident or something else, and saying, cool, it took insanity to get there. And one of the reasons when people ask, like, why did you pick a month? I remember thinking, I'm fucking tough and I'm not trying to brag, but I can get through a lot. And I knew I could endure and white knuckle like 2 weeks. I was like, I can just, push ups and jerking off. Like I can do anything for 2 weeks. But I knew after that 2 week period, my defense system would fall apart and the actual reality of this scenario would take over. So I'm curious for this next one, what will be on the other side of day 28? What happens on day 35? What happens on day 42? Even if there is more structure, even if there is yoga and a new workout every Monday and someone coming to hold my hand for an hour every Sunday and ask how I'm doing, it's still the length of time that I think will get to a depth that I'm really curious to access that I don't think we can access in the insanity of the modern world, right? That at any moment, like multiple times, I showed you guys on a call an hour ago, I have 3 check marks that I'm allowed to go on social media 3 times today, even though that's where my business lives, just to not be pulled into the collective of, or a Pepsi commercial or something that is actually insane. It's insane to think that I, as a grown man, have to have a system to not look at my electronic phone, which will make me feel less human. That's fucking insane. Yet, if I tell someone I'm going to sit in a dark room for 7 weeks, they literally think I'm a psychopath. Like literally, like you must be a psychopath. Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, you're not.
yeah.
I could attest to that, having met you. And
Thank you.
or if you are, you did a really good job of hiding it. You know, I think it's interesting because the first men's weekend that I went on, I think the best piece of advice that I got the first night was the leader running it was like, let your resistance fall away. You're going to want to resist. You're going to want to fight. Let it fall away because the more you let go of that resistance, the more you're going to get out of this experience. And if you spend the entire weekend resisting and then you get to the end, you're going to be like, okay, I kind of got something, but I didn't get what I came for. And he's like,
Yeah.
you're here for a reason. You came to get something. Let's get you that something. It's not going to be easy, but if you
Yep.
let go of your resistance. And so it kind of reminds me of that because I think regardless, yeah, it's like, what are we coming here for?
Mm.
You know? And I feel you on the social media. It is insane. Like I do the same thing. Like I am hardly on Meta anymore. I'm like, I don't want to be on there. I don't want to
Mm.
look at all the junk and everything else going on. I mean, even the platform I am on now, most of the time, Substack, which is a lot more wholesome, I'm still like, I gotta limit myself somewhat because it's like I could spend all day in a virtual environment all day in Zoom rooms, all day in other things like that. And at a certain point, it's like, fuck, I just need to go out for a walk and feel the wind on my face. I need to throw a punch. I need to do something else so that I can really feel
Mm.
in this body.
Yeah, and in real reality,
Yeah.
in real reality, right? Yeah, yeah, it's that's a whole nother wormhole. Um, but that is a craving I think our souls have now more than ever is give me something real. Especially as we see, like, we had a guy in the nation come in maybe a year ago. I don't know if you were on that call. He was a futurist. And he said, in 6 months, you will not be able to decipher the truth of video ever again. And I remember thinking, like, that is a radical shift in the human experience. We've always said, but there's video. Like, look, we're watching it. It's video, it's real. And now that's not going to be real. And I think for so many people, their foundation of reality is getting jostled or crumbled all around them. And it's really reality is just outside their door. Go for a walk. Go. Like the wind is real. Chat GPT isn't like blowing on my face, being like, "Oh, it's windy," right? Like if I go outside, it's fucking windy. If it's raining, I get rained on, etc. That there's going to be a core safety derived from that, even though we've in the past viewed that as what's actually dangerous.
And here's what's really interesting with that. Like, we see now like AI sex companions and things like that. Like that, if it isn't already there, it's certainly coming around the corner.
It's coming.
And it's like, how many people are basically allowing themselves to settle for the shallow end of an experience because they feel like that's all they can get? And I'm going to use AI sex companions as an example of that because I don't see how you can really have the real depth or the meaning or the interaction that occurs with sex with an artificial companion. You certainly don't get it with porn, and yet again, it's kind of the same thing. People limit themselves to something because they're like, well, at least I get that and I get off, and okay, that takes care of it. But it's like, well, there's so much more going on there.
Mm.
And so it's like, how do we step into that deeper, darker reality, that fullness of reality? And I think that that's where it comes down to endarkenment. We talk about enlightenment all the time, but I think enlightenment is a form of spiritual bypassing most of the
Hmm.
time. I'm like,
Yeah.
whereas endarkenment's kind of like you got to sit in your shit for a while. You got to sit with the discomfort. You got to be in that edge
Yeah.
and allow that to carry you wherever it's going to take you.
Hmm. Yeah, we don't we're addicted to the up and out and the light in the West. It's Francis Weller describes spirit as upward and outward and soul as downward and inward. And I've come back into this country, Taylor, after leaving it for some time and feeling like I can't feel the soul of America, of the United States. I can't feel it. Why I can feel it in the jungles of South America or even places in Asia or in Europe, but I can't feel it here. And then ask a single question of like, how I'm sorry this thing happened to you. Don't worry, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It's opened all these doors, and I'll sit with people and say like, but where's the rage? Where's the fucking grief? Where's the snot crying over this loss? You skipped that part. You jumped right over that part to the love and light. This is the best thing that ever happened. No bad vibes. And going, you've missed half of humanity, half of your humanity, I should say.
So, where do you think that comes from in terms of that spiritual bias? Like, if we look at it from a societal perspective, where do you think that originates from? I'm curious. I'm curious as to your thoughts. I have my own ideas, but
It was a couple of years ago. A guy in one of my men's groups asked if I knew what the term episteme was. I think that's
mhm.
what it's called. And I said no. And he said it is the secret undercurrent of society. At some point in Europe, it was like enlightenment. It was like getting closer to God. That was all that everything that was the society was geared towards. And I remember thinking in the US, our episteme, the thing that will betray our health for, the thing we'll betray each other for, is progress. It's progress. And so the soul and soul work is not progress. The soul speed is glacial, where love and light, man, I can get through this divorce tomorrow. If I say it's the best thing that ever happened to me, if I say it's a door of enlightenment, if I say it's just enlivening and enriching and awakening, boom, I'm back on track, back into progress tomorrow. But if I go, oof, grief is a year, 2 years, 3 years. How am I going to get the bigger car, the bigger TV, yada, yada, keep progressing upward, upward, upward if I have to stop and go downward and inward? So I think that's some of the collective. And again, here in the US, if you look at our pharmaceutical situation, anytime there's pain in any degree, we have a fix for it. We don't have a collective cultural conversation that, whoa, 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 whoa. If your elbow hurts, it's because you're using your elbow wrong. Not if your elbow hurts, take this and keep using your elbow wrong, or whatever the pain may be. If you're grieving, that's a process. It's a natural process that we don't want to speed up. We don't want to slow down. We want to let run its course. But we're so hyper focused on how do I get back, right? Like we have what, like 3 days maternity leave for some places. It's like, oh, you crapped out a kid on Friday. Well, back at work on Monday. And then collectively, we're like, look at her. She's amazing. She had a kid on Friday, and as opposed to being like, whoa, what are you doing? We're not even going to let you back to work for 3 months. We're going to actually force you to be a parent and raise the, I don't want to shit on mothers, but as a collective, we don't really give people time and space for any natural process. We try to jump over it.
Yeah, it's the emphasis on being busy. I'm not going to call it productivity either. I mean, productivity is a loaded word in and of itself, but it's the emphasis on busyness.
Mhm.
Like, oh, how busy can I be? How much can I show? How many things can I show that I've gotten done, as opposed to just I just need to take some time and lay down and be where I'm at and listen to this pain because there's something here.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember feeling like after I remember it was 2017, I had run my business into the ground. I made some bad decisions and I had to go back to work, which was absolutely one of the worst feelings in the world. And
Yeah.
just being like, oh, I hate this. And every time I tried to start my business up again, I just couldn't. I was just like, I can't. And I was like, I just have to fucking sit here with this and be
Mhm.
okay with it. That was my first real wintering experience. It was like, I have to be okay with spending however much time this is and just grieving the loss and sitting with the mistakes and recognizing, yep, that's you, dude. Nobody else did that. That was
Yeah.
you. And it was interesting though, because I did that, that's what actually led me to self-publishing. That's what led me to taking all my books back and public and being like, okay. And that started me on the path of where I'm at now, where it's like I'm able to make enough right now where I can cover the basic needs and live life on my terms.
Mhm.
Still working on the rest of the business pieces and doing it very carefully, but it was a great example of you have to be willing to sit in the stew of shit that you find yourself in. You've got to be willing to just be there for a while, grieve or whatever, or and if we want to look at it from a different perspective, like you have to be willing to sit in the change. So, someone's
Mhm.
had a baby, like, and this is an interesting thought. It's not just even like when the woman gets pregnant, it's not even that she's pregnant, it's the whole family that's pregnant.
Mhm.
It's just in a different way. Yes, the dad isn't literally carrying the baby, but that doesn't mean he's not pregnant with the change that's going on for her and that new baby coming into the world. And we don't give any of them enough time to
Mhm.
just be fully present with that, let alone, oh, okay, now you've got a kid and here's this new level of responsibility in life that you have to take on.
Yeah. We're in such a goddamn hurry. I had a early mentor, Chris Bale. I've brought him, recorded him with him a bunch of times, and he used to always say, like, "What are you sprinting towards? Like, why are you running so goddamn fast to your death?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm an American. Like, this is. I need to be in a hurry. If I'm not in a hurry, like, what? I don't know. Like, don't ask me questions like that. Uh,
Don't make me uncomfortable with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I just
seriously.
have to keep running
Don't
until I
slow me
fall
down.
off. Yeah.
Fuck. And some of it's probably a trauma reaction of like, if I keep moving, I never have to stop and feel. And some of it just is the collective of how addicted we are to our marketing. Of the thing you had yesterday isn't good enough now, you need something new. And that requires more effort and more effort and more effort. As opposed to, I remember when the minimalists, that book, their podcast, like those two guys came on scene and they were besieged because people were like, oh, thank you. You're right. Five black t-shirts, two pairs of jeans, five black pairs of undies, five black pair of socks, black pair of sneakers, wardrobe good for life. And it was like, oh, I can finally relax and actually focus on something else that has more meaning than this constant, not just keeping up with the Joneses, but constant level of dissatisfaction with what I have currently.
Yeah. And I mean that's just it. I like that Chris told you that. I think that's something I learned. I learned that I had to slow down and that actually by slowing down and being in the dark for a while in whatever way that I actually became more creative as a result.
Mm,
The inspiration just flows. Like, yes, I talked about earlier, like taking in and reading all those books. And there's something to be said for sometimes taking in information fast and just being
mhm,
like, let let all that process through. Anytime I do like a workshop experience, whether it's like a magical retreat or a men's work or thing like that, usually the day or next day or 2 days after, I'm like, I'm not really doing anything.
Yeah,
just going to let that stuff permeate into my being and
for
process
sure.
that.
For sure. You need to, but we don't process in the West. We don't allow the follow up thing to take place. This thing happened, boom, get past it. Where the real lesson, like if you've ever done plant medicine, they tell you it's in the processing afterwards. It's in the sitting with what came up. It's with the integration of what came up. So it's not just a cerebral experience, not just a heady thought. Oh, I read this book. The information's here. And I'm pointing to my head. It has to drop down into the body, and that is not something you can ever rush. Period.
No, it's something that just has to be experienced and taken in and embodied. And that's where the somatic practices come in, are so important in my experience. Like it was interesting because around that time I told you about, that's when I also switched my spiritual practice to more somatic based practices because I'm like, there's something missing here.
Hmm. For sure.
And I'm sure like with that 28 days in the dark, that you got really in touch with your body, didn't you, by the
For
end of it?
sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have two final questions for you. The first
Sure.
one's an easy one. Where do we find you on the web? Where can we get more information about you?
Beautiful. You can go to manuncivilized.com. That's where all my stuff is. If you want to get 28 days in darkness, it's manuncivilized.com/28 days. And I have some interesting stuff that I'll post up there, like a video walkthrough of the original space so that people aren't conceptualizing it, as well as a workbook at the end of the book so you can take what you've read in the book and actually apply it. I'm also on Instagram at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm, and have a podcast called the Uncivilized Podcast.
Yeah, I love that podcast, by the way. I listen
Thank
to
you.
it religiously every week.
Thank you.
And so for folks who are watching this, you will also see those links in the show notes. So that's going to be down below, as well as just a link to Man Uncivilized. Highly recommend you check that out.
Thank you.
There are some really good resources. Again, I'm a member of the Uncivilized Nation, so I can just personally attest to the fact that this has sharpened my edge and
Mm.
helped me go even deeper into my work, and I highly believe in it. I'm
Thank you,
actually
brother.
part of the Uncivilized Leadership Crucible right now, and I'm getting a ton out of that. So, like, I don't offer recommendations just because of something. I do it because I'm actually doing the work, and so I highly recommend this.
Thank you,
My
brother.
Yeah, my final question of the day for you is what is a word of wisdom that you can give us that we can take with us out into the day? I ask this of every one of my guests. So, what can we take with us moving forward into the day here?
Breathe. I know it's so cliche, man, but when I was like 22, Taylor, I was working at this like this was pre Whole Foods. So I was working at a health food store, like a real small mom and pop health food store. And this guy came in and I never spoke to him again. And he was telling me this story. And he says, there's no such thing as a bad situation. There's only bad breathing. And even at 22, which was 27 years ago, it landed. And I remember thinking, how many times in my life have I just been able to breathe and everything's okay? Or times when things were okay, but I was like, and I couldn't. So, literally, folks, like breathe. We're going to get through what we're going through right now collectively. You will get through what you're going through personally. It's not a bad situation. It's most likely just challenged breathing.
Right? That is absolutely real. Yeah, I do a ton of breathing meditation, so I wholeheartedly second that.
Thank you.
Breathe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate you making some time in your schedule for me
My
and
pleasure.
looking forward to sharing this with everyone.
Thanks, brother.
So that was Traver Boehm from Man Uncivilized. And again, check his stuff out. Go under the show notes here. And speaking of books, I am also an author of um, The Quest for Mature Masculinity. If you're interested in exploring men's work and discovering what the mature masculine is and how to embody that in your life, go to my website, www.inneralchemycoach.com slash quest for mature masculinity. Actually, I'm just going to put the link down below in the show notes myself. I'm also going to mention my book, Inner Alchemy of Wintering, where I explore the alchemical aspects of wintering practices so that if you're interested in that, you can check that out. And again, thank you for watching the show. Please share this. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Substack, please share, restack, comment on it. That's how we get this work out there and how we transform the lives of men, women, and really the world itself. Thank you all and have an excellent day.